To improve is to change. To be perfect is to change often. Winston Churchill. People often long for perfection, the way they long for a safe harbor, yet forget that perfection is not a still destination, but a ceaseless current like a river that runs clear only when it never stops moving. To improve oneself is to dare to step beyond the comfort zone, like a seed that must accept the breaking of its hard shell in order to rise and become a tree. But perfection, if it can be defined at all, demands a rhythm of change far denser, far more subtle, almost like a continuous state of rebirth in consciousness. It is when we change not only our behavior, but also our way of seeing, our way of understanding ourselves and the world. Those who refuse to change tend to cling to their old self. The way one clings to a shirt grown too tight, uncomfortable, yet familiar. Meanwhile, those who have truly matured regard change the way they regard breath, neither forced nor feared. They understand that every change is a kind of death of the old version of themselves, yet at the same time, the birth of something deeper, something freer. Perfection is not about becoming flawless, but about becoming so flexible that one can continuously adjust without ever losing one's essence. Like a sculptor who never stops carving not to arrive at a fixed form, but so that every line reflects the living spirit within. Change is no longer a threat, but a privilege. And in each small movement of change, we draw not only closer to wholeness, but closer to ourselves. Genius is simply a talented person who has done all of their homework. Thomas Edison. We have a tendency to mythologize talent in order to comfort ourselves. If genius is innate, then our procrastination and lack of persistence can be justified. Most of what we call superiority comes from doing ordinary things in extraordinary ways. Doing all the homework may sound modest, but it is, in truth, the symbol of a deeply fortified inner architecture. It is the ability to sit with boredom, to endure the feeling of not being good enough yet, and to press forward anyway. A pianist practicing every key until the fingers no longer need to think, or an athlete repeating a movement until the body itself remembers. Genius is not a flash of lightning in a single moment, but a flame kept alive through thousands of rekindlings. Respect for the process. Those who do all the homework are not obsessed with immediate results, but understand that every small step accumulates into a great leap. They do not flee from repetition, they turn it into an instrument of self-refinement. And it is precisely within that seemingly dull repetition that talent is sharpened, intuition is formed, and what we call genius gradually emerges as a natural consequence. Genius is not some distant privilege, but a quiet choice made every single day. When we sit down and complete our homework even when no one is watching, even when there is no recognition, we are inch by inch stepping into the territory of the extraordinary. Not loudly, not mysteriously, but with enough depth to alter the entire trajectory of a life. Just because something doesn't do what you planned it to do, doesn't mean it's useless. Thomas A. Edison. When a tool fails to serve its original purpose, we instinctively discard it rather than reimagine its use. But life operates more like a laboratory than an assembly line. Some of the greatest inventions were born from deviation, a failed chemical reaction that opened an entirely new direction. What seems ineffective is sometimes simply waiting to be placed in the right context. Like a key that won't open the door you intended. You could rage and throw it away, or pause to realize perhaps it belongs to another door entirely, a space you have never yet thought to seek. The difference lies in how you perceive it, not in the key itself. Not every value must serve our original goal. Sometimes it is precisely the not as intended that opens possibilities we hadn't the imagination to expect. When we stop viewing everything through the lens of right or wrong, useful or useless, we begin to see a world far richer, far more alive. What does not work is not the end. It is an invitation to shift perspective. And in that shift, we not only discover new value in things, but we expand the very limits of our own perception. Only action can erase doubt. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. Doubt is a remarkably cunning ghost of the mind, rooting itself deep like fog, threading through every crack in one's resolve. It keeps people frozen, not from a lack of ability, but because they are bound by questions that have no end. What if I fail? What if I'm not good enough? In truth, doubt does not need answers, it only needs delay. And the longer the delay, the stronger it grows. Like a room sealed shut, the longer the darkness is trapped, the thicker it becomes. Only action is the one light capable of cutting through that fog. Not more thinking, not more perfect preparation, but a step forward, however small, however uncertain. Action is like a blade slicing through the web of hesitation. The moment we begin, we are forced to face reality rather than imagination. And reality, however harsh or however simple, is always clearer than the fear our minds inflate. We wait for confidence before we act, yet confidence only arrives after we have already acted. Like someone learning to swim who cannot understand water by standing on the shore. They only truly learn when they accept stepping in, letting that first cold wave awaken every sense. Doubt does not vanish because we have resolved every possibility of failure, but because we have grown accustomed to walking forward in spite of it. Thus, action is not only a means, it is also a remedy. It pulls us out of the labyrinth of thought and places us into the current of experience. And in that current, we come to see that most of our fear was only an amplified illusion, while we ourselves are far more adaptable and far more powerful than we ever believed. When we act, we do not merely change our circumstances. We reconstruct the very beliefs we hold about ourselves. And in that moment, doubt is no longer the one in command, but merely a faint whisper trailing behind us. The hardest thing to see is what is in plain sight. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. We may travel thousands of miles in search of meaning, yet overlook what lies right beneath our feet. The obvious is often dismissed not because it is complex, but because it is too familiar. In our hunger for the novel and the dramatic, we tend to ignore the self-evident, much like eyes that cannot see themselves without a mirror. And so it is that the truths closest to us become the hardest to perceive. What we most need to understand is often already present in our repeated daily actions, in the emotions we deliberately evade, or in the small signals we dismiss as unimportant. It is like a mosaic of which we hold every piece in our hands, yet refuse to step back far enough to see the whole image. We do not see what is before us because we do not wish to see it. For to recognize it would mean having to change, to take responsibility, or to surrender the comfortable illusions we have grown fond of. And so, not recognizing is sometimes not a lack of ability, but a subtle defense mechanism of the mind. Only when we slow down and find the courage to look directly at the present without embellishing or evading, do things that seemed ordinary begin to reveal their full depth. And then we realize what we were searching for was never far away. It was always there, quiet, patient, waiting for us to become clear-eyed enough to see it. Time is the most valuable thing a man can spend. Theophrastus. Time is a form of wealth that everyone possesses, yet no one can truly hold. It does not sit still in a vault, does not accumulate at will, and cannot be returned once spent. Every moment that passes is like an invisible coin withdrawn from the account of one's life. Whether we are conscious of it or not, we are always spending it. Most people spend the most precious thing they have without awareness, as if it were infinite. An hour gone leaves no shockwave, a day past leaves no clear mark. Yet these smallest of units, when they accumulate, shape the whole of a life. Like water that drips and hollows stone, the way we use each fleeting stretch of time is how we quietly sculpt our own fate. Not the rare grand decisions, but the choices repeated day after day. What we give our time to, who we give it for, and with what spirit. These are what truly paint the portrait of who we are. We are willing to deliberate at length before spending money, yet squander time without a second thought. And yet money can be earned again, time cannot. Once it has passed, it does not merely disappear. It becomes the past, becomes memory, and ultimately becomes the person we have turned into. Therefore, every choice about time is not simply a momentary act, but a decision that shapes who we are at the deepest level. No longer asking, do I have time for this? But asking, is this worthy of my time? And that question, simple yet razor sharp, is what helps us reclaim command of our own lives. Because at the end of it all, the way we spend our time doesn't just reflect how we are living. It is our life, being written out 1 second at a time. Life is far too important a thing ever to talk seriously about. Oscar Wilde. Precisely because life is so vast, so complex, and impossible to fully grasp, every effort to treat it with absolute seriousness tends to distort it. When we try to frame life with rigid definitions and absolute principles, we inadvertently diminish the very experience we are living. Like trying to hold water in a clenched fist. The harder you grip in seriousness, the faster it slips away. We are serious because we are afraid of being wrong, afraid of losing control, afraid that without analysis and definition, we will lose our way. But life does not operate like a logic problem. It is more like a piece of music where rhythm, silence, and even the off notes are what create meaning. If we only fixate on understanding it, we forget how to feel it. There is a quiet wisdom in not taking everything too seriously. That does not mean being shallow, but rather knowing how to keep a lightness that allows for flexibility, an openness that welcomes uncertainty. When we stop trying to control every detail, we begin to see the beauty in the unplanned, in what falls outside the schedule. Those things that tend to carry the most genuine feeling. Perhaps the approach to life is not to dissect it like a problem to be solved, but to enter it like an experience to be lived fully. And in that state, we are no longer caught up in needing to understand, but are free to feel, to try, to fail, and to live more authentically, more lightly, yet paradoxically, more profoundly than ever before. Three things cannot be long hidden: the sun, the moon, and the truth. The Buddha. There are things in life that carry the nature of light. No matter how many layers cover them, they will always find a way to surface. The sun cannot be held behind the horizon forever. The moon cannot remain hidden behind the night indefinitely. And truth is the same. It carries an inner pressure, quiet yet relentless, that demands to be seen. People may delay, distort, or even deny the truth for a time, but the more it is concealed, the more pressure accumulates. Like a spring compressed to its limit, sooner or later, it snaps back with a force greater than before. Concealing the truth is often not merely an outward act, but an inner negotiation. We convince ourselves that it's not the right time, that no one needs to know, yet deep inside, a part of our consciousness quietly records everything. And that fracture creates tension. One side straining to hold silence, the other ceaselessly knocking at the door. Truth in such a case does not exist merely as a fact, but as a voice that refuses to be silenced. Like moonlight threading through the gaps in clouds, or the dawn slowly dissolving the dark, truth often surfaces little by little until there is nothing left to conceal. And when it finally emerges, what surprises people is not the truth itself, but the realization that they had known it all along. Instead of expending energy to conceal or avoid, we might choose to face it sooner and more gently. For when all is said and done, truth is not the enemy, it is only light. And while light can sometimes blind us at first, it is the only thing that allows us to see clearly the path we are walking. If life were predictable, it would cease to be life and would be without flavor. Eleanor Roosevelt. People always crave certainty, as if a perfect map could guarantee them a journey without wrong turns. But if life were truly predictable at every step, every outcome, it would lose the very vitality that makes it alive. Like a film whose entire script you already know, where every emotion is reduced to hollow repetition. Uncertainty, the very thing we tend to see as the root of anxiety. is, in truth, the energy that nourishes experience. It creates suspense, hope, disappointment, and those unexpected moments that make us truly feel we are alive. The desire to control the future often springs from fear. Fear of failure, fear of loss, fear of what lies beyond our ability to cope. But when we try to turn life into a string of predictable events, we inadvertently flatten every shade of feeling. A life of total certainty is not a safe life. It is a life stripped of its capacity for discovery. Like a road stretching straight into infinity. No bends, no forks, nothing to make us stop, reflect, or change direction. The unexpected moments are often the most pivotal ones. A chance encounter, an unforeseen failure, or an impulsive decision. All of these can alter the trajectory of a life in ways that no plan could ever have designed in advance. Uncertainty, then, is not the destroyer, but the quiet architect, opening possibilities we had never imagined. When we accept that not everything needs to be known in advance, we begin to live with a different kind of freedom, the freedom to experience without needing total control. We learn to walk forward without seeing the whole road, trusting in our own capacity to adapt. And in that state, life is no longer an equation to be solved, but a vivid, colorful journey where each unknown is not a threat, but an invitation. It is better to offer no excuse than a bad one. George Washington. An excuse is a subtle effort of the ego to shield itself from the wound of being wrong. Yet not every form of self-protection carries dignity. A bad excuse, clumsy, dishonest, or blame-shifting, is like cheap paint slapped over a crack. It does not hide the truth. It only makes the weakness beneath more visible. At that point, the issue is no longer the original mistake, but how we chose to face it. And it is precisely that way of facing things that defines who we are. When we rush to find reasons to justify ourselves, we are trying to preserve an image, a version of ourselves that does no wrong. But the paradox is, the harder we try to protect that image with weak excuses, the faster it crumbles. Others may forget the mistake, but they rarely forget the feeling of insincerity. A bad excuse not only erodes trust, but diminishes us in our own eyes as well, because deep down, we know we chose evasion over growth. Silence carries a different kind of power, not as escape, but as quiet acceptance. Accepting that we were wrong, that there is no need to embellish or over-explain. Silence at the right moment is like a meaningful pause. It allows the truth to stand still, clear, unbent. And from that pause, we can begin to make things right through action, not through words. People are not judged by whether they make mistakes. That is unavoidable, but by how they respond when they do. A bad excuse is the mark of fear, while honesty, however imperfect, is the mark of inner strength. And it is that inner strength alone that earns the trust of others and allows us to respect ourselves.